It is 7:30 and time for Sunset News. My name is Ashwin Berry. In the next 30 minutes, we'll be bringing you local as well as international news, the story of the day, economic indicators, the weekend's weather, and sport. But first in the news tonight, Grootfontein swore in its new council at last yesterday, with Mrs. Talita Gadisis as the new town's mayor. This comes after two previous swearing-in ceremonies were derailed by disagreement among the town's leaders. Mrs. Elizabeth Castor is the new chairperson of the management committee, with Mr. Vickers Jacobs and Mr. Victor Chanduka being elected as members of the committee. The Oshodonjupa Regional Council also attended the event. The new onslaught of crack cocaine in rural areas and on farms is very worrisome indeed. It is a highly addictive substance and is easily cooked or produced on simple household appliances with over-the-counter drugs. If locally produced, we can be sure it is sold much more cheaply than before and would cause a sudden flood into new markets. This in turn could spell huge negative impacts for rural communities, says Uyis Prinsloo of Nyime Anti-Poaching Unit. Now, Amnesty International Iceland says the Icelandic police are suppressing the efforts of journalists to expose corruption linked to the fish rot scandal. The human rights group slammed the approach of the police and said journalists operating in that country were facing retaliation and backlash from Icelandic fishing company Samherji over the scandal. Samherji is accused of allegedly paying bribes in exchange for lucrative fishing quotas in a scheme involving former fisheries minister Bernard Esau and former Justice Minister of Namibia, Saki Shangala. Now, the Popular Democratic Movement has returned to Parliament to demand that Article 47 of the National Constitution, which requires those running for public office while employed in the public service to run before campaigning, must be amended. The PDM has for a very long time insisted that the Electoral Commission of Namibia has misinterpreted the provision and that an official can only resign once duly elected. PDM Member of Parliament Alma Dienda returned to Parliament last week, introducing a motion stating that Article 47 are unconstitutional provisions because they impinge on the rights of National Council members, regional and local authority councillors, and civil servants from being freely elected to the National Assembly without having to lose their respective jobs. Unlocking horizons is the new buzzword of the Hospitality Association of Namibia, HANA, that has been for the first time able to hold its Congress after 2 years. The Minister of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, Honorable Pohamba Shifeta, officially opened the event in the southern coastal town of Luderitz. He was excited by the fact that finally 6 concessionists have been appointed for the Tsauqayab Sperrigbet Park. Now, the recently published Afrobarometer study reveals that 7 out of 10 adult Namibian people have not been vaccinated yet. While 27% might get the vaccination, 43% states that they are unlikely to do so. The study investigates the reasons why so many Namibians are hesitating to get vaccinated, but also looks at other factors like the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and how people feel about it. That brings us to the end of our top stories. When we return, we bring you the story of the day as we look forward to World Pangolin Day tomorrow. Thank you for staying with Sunset News. Let's get into the story of the day. Saturday marks World Pangolin Day with a fun event taking place at Eagles in Avis. Yolanda Nell talks to the founder and director of the Pangolin Conservation and Research Foundation, Kelsey Predita, about the creatures. Have a look.
Can you quickly tell us about your foundation?
Yeah, so I founded the Pangolin Conservation and Research Foundation in 2020. And the goal with the foundation is to help support research, conservation, collaboration, as well as education and awareness through community engagement and local empowerment.
Why is it so important?
It's very important because not much has been done for pangolin conservation in southern Africa. We do have the Namibian Pangolin Working Group, which I'm the secretariat, and we have these lovely posters which our group has put together. We are chaired by the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, but outside of that action, there's a lot lacking when it comes to research and understanding.
Why should we be protecting the pangolin?
We should protect them because they're actually the most trafficked mammal worldwide. Over the past few years within Namibia, there's more cases registered for pangolin alone than elephant and rhino combined.
Wow. That's fascinating. What are they using the pangolins for?
Well, pangolins have always been used traditionally as well as for food, for sustenance. But unfortunately in Asia, they're used in traditional Chinese medicine as well as eaten as a delicacy. Mm-hmm. And so there's actually 8 species worldwide, 4 in Asia, 4 in Africa. Now the Asian species are becoming critically endangered and nearing extinction. They're turning to Africa to fill this demand.
Oh, wow. I see here you have a reward and that it's illegal to pick up and to transport pangolins. Tell us more about the reward here.
Yeah, so the reward scheme was actually set up as an initiative in collaboration with a few different organizations some years ago. The Namibian Chamber of Environment, working with the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, as well as the Blue Rhino Task Team. And so there is a reward that leads to the arrest of someone that is illegally trafficking or smuggling or poaching a pangolin. So the hotline is 55555, and people can text that number and it is completely anonymous.
I don't know what our numbers look like in Namibia, and you don't have to disclose that if it's for security reasons. But why is it important to start protecting them now and not 10 years when they might be endangered?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, because they are so protected, I can't talk about numbers, but generally we actually don't know a lot because they are so shy and difficult to study. But trends over the past 6 years has shown an increase in trafficking. It might not be an increase, just that we're getting better at catching people. However, because we don't know how many we have, it's imperative that we start protecting them and learning more how to protect them.
We've touched on the subject that they are shy and it's difficult to research them. But what have you found about them in your research?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I found actually quite a lot. They are shy and predominantly nocturnal. So through this research, it was a lot of hours at night, but they are very picky eaters. And so my master's thesis actually focused on what do they eat, what type of space do they need, and what type of birds do they prefer. And all of this information was focused at trying to help live confiscated pangolins. There's an alarming number, about 30 on average live pangolins confiscated per year in Namibia. Wow. And so we were looking at what can we maybe do to give them a better chance at survival. So one really important factor is their dietary preference. They prefer about 6 species out of 30 available in central Namibia. And as my research has expanded, we see that they're preferring different things in different areas. Very often when we confiscate a pangolin, the police confiscate a pangolin, we don't get the information about where they've come from. And this is important because they're actually eating different things depending where they come from. Oh. So we really need to get an understanding of what's a suitable habitat and how can we figure out where they came from by looking at what they eat.
Have you found that people are keeping them as pets?
We haven't seen that. Okay. There's been people definitely trying to keep them alive because that's part of the market. But they do not fare well in captivity. Because of their need for fresh ants and termites, especially larvae and eggs, pangolins worldwide have had a hard time surviving in captive settings.
An important cause for a truly beautiful animal. Now, lived poverty is rife in Namibia. This and more in today's economic news after the break.
AgriMonitor is 'n weeklikse landbouprogram met nuus oor lewende hawe, akkerbou, houtskoolproduksie of ander boerderybedrywighede in die land. Ons gehoor is boere, agribesighede en finansiële instellings wat dienste aan landbouers lewer. AgriMonitor word uitgesaai op NTV, die aanlyn stromingskanaal 1up2 en op die Facebook-blaaie van Republikein, Namibia Media Holdings en AgriMonitor. 'n Nuusgesprek laat ons die soeklig op landbouaktualiteit skyn. In plaas te bring ons besoeke aan ons land se voorste boere, ons verskaf weekliks 'n dagboek van veilinghuise se naderende veilings, ons hou self ook dagboek van belangrike events in die landbouwêreld en ons deel dit met julle en ons gee 'n oorsig van die heersende vleispryse. Kontak gerus vir Anoushka de Tooy met jou advertensie navraag by 081 700 9848 of stuur 'n e-pos aan Anoushka by nmh.com.na en Anoushka spel 'n mens ANOESGA. Of kontak vir Ronel Rademeier oor nuus en boerdery sake by 0811 27815 of stuur 'n e-pos aan Ronel gespel RONELLE by republikein.com.na.
Thank you for staying with us. Let's get into your economic news. Now, nearly 8 out of every 10 Namibians surveyed in the latest Afrobarometer often had to survive without any cash income last year. About 64% often went hungry, 51% regularly didn't have enough clean water for home use, and 49% didn't have sufficient cooking fuel. The data released yesterday afternoon also shows that 58% of respondents often had to cope without enough medicine or adequate medical treatment. In our next story, Moderna has applied for patents in South Africa relating to its COVID-19 vaccine, prompting fears the company could eventually seek to prevent a new African vaccine manufacturing hub from making its own version of the mRNA shot. A group of 60 Africa-based charities raised concerns about the patent applications, Reuters reports. South Africa's Afrigen Biologics, which used the publicly available sequence of Moderna's vaccine to make its own version of the vaccine, plans to start making and distributing across Africa in November. The Africa Vaccine Hub has WHO backing as part of a pilot project to give poor and middle-income countries the know-how to make COVID-19 vaccines. Currently, the continent is forced to import 99% of its vaccine needs due to poor domestic manufacturing capacity. All right, let's get into your economic indicators. The Namibian dollar is down next to the pound, but up against the US dollar and euro. On the NSX, Capricorn stock took a 0.1% dive, with all other stocks holding their ground. Trustco stock is down 1.30 points, with the overall index closing with a 0.88% dip. All commodities are up, with gold and zinc performing the best, with 0.8% and 0.88% rises respectively. This is still Sunset News. After the break, your weather. This is still Sunset News. Let's get into your weather. Over the weekend, showers are expected late on Sunday in Windhoek with a minimum temperature of 18 degrees predicted. And it may be a good time to step outside because it is sunny in Walvish Bay with a maximum of 20 degrees expected. Let's have a look at what you can expect prior to that on Saturday. It is sunny in Katima tomorrow, and in Windhoek you can expect some partly cloudy conditions. Keetmanshoop, Ariamsvlei and Aranos are carrying all the heat potential with maximum temperatures of 35 degrees predicted. Now, after the break, we'll be taking a look at the latest developments between Russia and Ukraine in our international news. See you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome to another exciting edition.
Thank you for staying with Sunset News. Let's get into your international news story. Russian-backed rebels and Ukrainian forces traded accusations on Thursday that each had fired across the ceasefire line in eastern Ukraine, raising alarm at a time when Western countries have warned of the possibility of a Russian invasion any day. The details of the incidents could not be independently confirmed, and the initial reports suggested they were on a similar scale to ceasefire violations that have been common throughout the year conflict. But they come at a time, the 8-year conflict, but they come at a time of global concern over the prospect of a wider war, with more than 100,000 Russian troops near the Ukrainian frontier. Moscow denies it is planning an invasion and has said this week it is pulling back some troops, though Western countries say they are not convinced. The separatists accused government forces of opening fire on their territory 4 times in the past 24 hours, while Ukraine accused the rebels of firing shells, including some that struck a kindergarten, causing shell shock to 2 civilians. All right, let's get straight into your sport after the break. Now, in your sports stories, Namibia's top cyclists will compete in the Tour de Windhoek this weekend, which will consist of 5 stages from today till Sunday. A total of 12 teams, including 2 teams from South Africa, will compete in the event. The first stage started at Dodabis Road at 7 a.m. this morning, and the second got underway this afternoon at Tony Rust Racetrack at 5 p.m. The third stage starts at Papkowitz Mega Build at 5 p.m. tomorrow. The fifth and final stage starts at 9 a.m. on Sunday in Von Bach Dam Road, while the prize given is scheduled to take place at 12 p.m. at the same venue. Sticking with cycling, top Olympic cyclist and the country's greatest in the last 17 years, Dan Craven has retired from professional cycling events. He has, however, indicated that if selected by the Namibian Cycling Federation for the Commonwealth Games taking place in Birmingham this July, he would participate. Craven took part in the Nedbank Cycle Challenge last weekend. He, however, didn't make the podium finish, which was won by Alex Miller. We end our sports news with some boxing. A highly experienced Wilberforce Black Mamba Shihepo is waiting in anticipation to strike at young and fresh Vidal Riley on Saturday in a cruiserweight 4-round fight in Manchester, England. All right, those were our sports news stories. After the break, we'll be wrapping it up with our highlights.
Join the club, the Infinity Club with Paratus, and jump into a world of limitless connectivity. For only $599 per month excluding VAT, the new LTE Infinity Lite package that includes a Wingle will overcome all limitations. Visit paratus.africa/NA for more information.
Always prepared. Paratus.
Thank you for staying with Sunset News through the last half hour. Let's get into your highlights. Grootfontein swore in its new council at last yesterday, with Mrs. Talita Garisis as the town's new mayor. This comes after two previous swearing-in ceremonies were derailed by disagreement among the town's leaders. The Oshodonjupa Regional Council also attended the event. Amnesty International Iceland says the Icelandic police are suppressing the efforts of journalists to expose corruption linked to the fish rot scandal. The human rights group slammed the approach of the police and said journalists operating in that country were facing retaliation and backlash from the Icelandic fishing company Samherji over the scandal. And the recently published Afrobarometer study reveals that 8 out of 10 adult Namibian people have not been vaccinated yet. While 27% might get the vaccination, 43% states that they are unlikely to do so. The study investigates the reason why so many Namibians are hesitating to get vaccinated, but also looks at other factors like the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and how people feel about it. That brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Sunset News. Make sure you join Sunset News on Facebook on all the NMH platforms every weekday, as well as on our website, oneup2.com. Sunset News screens on DSTV channel 285 and GoTV channel 94 every weekday from 7:30 to 8. Have a wonderful and restful weekend. And remember, we'll be back same time, same place on Monday. My name is Ashwin Bedi. Thank you for ending your day with us.